Good morning, everybody. Here at the end of this week, I've been thinking back about the themes we've had in the forecast and as we've watched these things evolve. And I just wanted to bring up to speed on the latest update here on the kind of phantom storms that the GFS keeps producing. I'm talking about this right down here. So this is this morning's 0Z run. And what we've got here is, yet again, the GFS attempting to produce after around day 12 or so, a tropical system coming up out of the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. So now we've seen, I think this makes this 6 runs in a row that the model's attempting to do this. Now again, I called it a phantom storm because I don't have any ensemble support for it yet. We know the ocean temperatures are quite warm. We know that it's the time of year where we could get tropical systems to show up. But the newest one, again, way out there, and we jokingly call this La La Land for the models. But it's out here and it's attempting to kind of, strengthen and come into the Gulf. So we're going to just gonna have to watch the trends all weekend long to see if it just continues to be a phantom storm or not. But I wanted to keep you aware of that. Also, we've talked a lot about how warm these ocean temperatures are in this region, and I want to show you something. There's a website I just keep a real close eye on out of NOAA, and what you're looking at here is the historical average right there of the sea surface temperatures for the whole of the tropical Atlantic, and it's in degrees Celsius. So normally at a peak, the average is somewhere around 28 degrees C. And where we currently sit right now is about the peak, is about the value that we typically have in the peak, which is over here in October. So normally, because the water takes about 5 times the amount of heat and energy to warm up as compared to land, we have a lag in when the greatest heating is of the year, which is typically in July, versus when you have the greatest ocean temperatures. And they store that heat for a while and keep it quite warm throughout the winter months. That's why, honestly, we like to go to the south in winter because the ocean temperatures help to moderate that climate. Anyway, I just want you to notice how warm it is there. So this has just got us continually thinking about what this could mean for this upcoming tropical season. Next, let's go take a look at the United States. This is the sun was rising here. There's still a lot of very poor air quality in this area from the wildfire smoke earlier in the week from the fires in Quebec. And I'm going to take you back to yesterday. I just love looking at these animations here and just show you a few things that are going on. Again, we watched the subtropical jet trying to nose its way in. See these high, thin clouds here? They're really moving, but they're not yet fully just ejecting into the plains. That's the thing we're going to watch to change. You can also see the lows that start in California and then roll through Nevada, spinning here. This is what's helping initiate all this cloud cover and all of the very large storms. And once again, Montana saw some massive storms the other day. But as the sun was setting, we can again see how poor the air quality is, just wrapping itself around this deeper, broader trough over the east. And a lot of isolated storms, some of which were quite large, running up the plains once again. We know that we're watching very carefully the fires. Let's take you back to last night here in British Columbia and Alberta. So yesterday afternoon when I recorded it, I got up to about this point, but as we watched the sun set, you can now see just the extent of the wildfire smoke as the sun comes in at a bit more oblique angle. And so you have more reflection of that low sun angle off of the smoke. So we can see it just a little bit better here. And it's actually, one thing I want to point out how low the smoke is in the atmosphere here. So the air quality is just, it's horrendously bad here. But how you note that is that if you look right in through here, that would be the front range of the mountains. So the smoke is pushing up against the mountains and trying to get over the top of them here. So it just kind of shows us now what this looks like. Again, we're watching the smoke kind of trace out the pattern for this weekend. And this is a 2-day simulation of where the smoke is going to go from NOAA's RAP model. And it's a rapid refresh model. And again, we're watching things begin to improve over the east with smoke, but the front that's dropping down right here as this low eventually this weekend curls up over Michigan just kind of shows us where that frontal boundary will be moving to the south. But you do note that we continue to see more smoke getting put into the atmosphere from the fires in Alberta and British Columbia, Our all hazards weather map this morning reflects several areas that have air quality alerts again today, but because of the storms we continue to see here, we have flood watches out for parts of the Pacific Northwest into Montana. And so we're going to see some wildfire smoke getting mixed in with this, but still more heavy rain coming into this area. From there, let's just take a quick look at the last 7 days. So the flood watches are warranted because of how much rain has fallen in the last 7 days here. Some places picking up more than 6 inches of rain. We're going to take a look next week, I think, at what some of these year-to-date totals are, because there are some places here that I imagine are already approaching at least a half year or more's worth of rain just in the recent days. We do have another cutoff load that's going to come into California. The one that we've watched over the last week has put in quite a bit of thunderstorm activity here. And this whole corridor's been open up for storms, as we saw earlier in the week, easterly flow, and then later in the week, just the upslope flow that's been continuing to rip off these thunderstorms here. Overall, the driest places, just when you see big swaths of land, have been really around the Great Lakes Basin. That's been the target. We've talked quite a bit about that. But that's not to say there aren't places that have been missed by a lot of these storms. Well, we are finally at that point. I mean, it's June 9th. There's a lot of forecast fatigue with this. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been kind of calling this June 7th to June 10th time period as a shift in the pattern. I'm going to bring up to speed with some of the latest forecast information. So we're going to watch a low curl up here on Saturday into Sunday, and that's going to bring rain into parts of Wisconsin, into Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. These have been places that have been very dry. And if you note right now, the current WPC forecast for lower Michigan, which we've talked about being the driest in the last 131 years in this area, models are right now attempting to put possibly up to 2 inches of rain there. Now, I'll show you what it looks like in just a few seconds. But the corridor over which we expect the wettest conditions, I know you've seen me draw these arrows hundreds of times, but that's what the kind of the advertisement in the flow has been. It's been this region in through here, so really hitting parts of the Mid-South with quite a bit of rainfall. And there's areas down here that are desperate for this. My biggest concern is what happens a bit farther to the north of it. And I'll just kind of highlight, maybe this region here in the States, but this extends up into parts of Manitoba and Ontario as well. This is going to be an area that I think stays the driest the longest out of this particular pattern. And let's go take a look at why. Okay, upper level winds today. Here's the trough that's exiting. Here's the one that's going to get pulled into the backside of this and wrap itself up over Michigan. Here's the beginning of that subtropical ridge that eventually is going to move over to Texas and get our flow coming across the country like this, which is going to help eliminate all of the stagnant air here. There's another trough coming into California. That's not changed. Still, the trough in the Aleutian Islands pumping in the moisture in this direction, at least the momentum. And I just want to see this subtropical ridge really get its act together, push itself more closer to the East Coast and start to expand. That is the piece we're waiting on with this pattern. So as we work our way into the beginning of this forecast, as we start off tomorrow, so this would be the 10th, we are going to be watching for a complex of storms. We're going to see it in the high-res models that have now prompted the National Weather Service's Storm Prediction Center to increase to an enhanced risk of severe storms in this part of the Red River Valley, coming out of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Then as we work our way into the day on Sunday, remember as that front pushes down here farther to the south, while the low curls itself up over Michigan, there's going to just be adequate moisture. There's going to be a good lift and decent shear plus a decent amount of instability. We're now going to watch this part of the Mid-South for the risk of strong to severe storms. So our high-resolution models are beginning to pick up on this. We're going to start off at 7 a.m. this morning. And again, what we're not looking at this model to tell us is exactly the timing and location of the storms. It can't. In summer, we now cast those positions. We're just looking to see where it initiates convection. So going throughout the day today, we see the moisture coming out of Montana here into northern parts of Washington and getting here over into western Washington as well. So Friday afternoon, a lot of isolated convection. Here's the front. Okay, isolated storms all throughout the plains, all throughout the Intermountain West, in New England, around the deeper low, a lot of showers here. And even as far south as that front's going to extend, there's actually a big front digging in here that's going to come all the way down to Florida. So this is now tonight, as we work our way into Saturday morning. What I want you to notice here is that the models are pushing the storm systems that are in the plains east. So we've had a lot of flow out of the east. This is the change that we were talking about coming through here. Now what we're going to watch, this is very early in the morning on the Saturday, is possibly the sustained overnight convection, maybe pushing right through this section of the country. I do not know if the models have the timing of this right. I've got to spend some time today really digging into this to see. But you notice that I'm watching right here, that there is this chance for storms just kind of ripping out of the Red River Valley toward the Mississippi. Now, while that's going on, look to the north. The front is sagging. We're increasing the chances for scattered storms in throughout this region by Saturday morning through Saturday midday. And then as we work our way into Saturday evening, this is some of the first rain in a very long time for parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas. Well, Kansas has had more rain, but this is going to come through and deliver. Now, it's not drought breaking, not even close, but it's a pattern shift. The flow is coming out of the west again, everyone. It's been out of the east for so long. And as we get this to sweep through here, this is Saturday night into Sunday morning, that's when the low begins to curl itself up over Michigan. So this will be the first of a few different chances for getting rain into some of these very dry places. The following chances are coming from here. This almost omega look to the pattern, like you see it right there. This is about to wave break west. So here comes the trough this weekend into the Great Lakes. And by the way, the European model has kind of had the best look at this. The GFS kind of caved to it. We're going to see the flow shifting around a bit like that. That means another trough coming into California. And then as we play this out into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now look, this is such a different look out here in the middle of the month. There's flow coming in. It's going to curl around like this, but the subtropical jet will begin to gain some momentum around this ridge. Meanwhile, there are troughs coming through this area. So what this is going to end up doing is this is going to kind of just energize the pattern a bit, get some flow back in here. And do you remember back over the last couple of weeks, I know a lot of you very faithfully watched this, I kept commenting on the spacing of the ISO heights in here and how they were so far apart. We don't see that anymore. So out there by day 10, the 19th, that's the kind of flow we're looking at. And it's supported by this ridge. If you wanted to make an adjustment to where there was just moisture everywhere that it had been dry, then get rid of this piece. That's the last kind of link that's preventing the big subtropical ridge from just owning this area. And as a result, we're just waiting to see that get out. But there's a lot of things about the second half of June here that are prompting us to really keep this thunderstorm forecast alive. So let's add it up in the models, okay? Let's go out 1 week with the European. So as we do this, here we go. This is through the weekend, getting into Sunday. So see where the Europeans drop in the front, right in through here. The storms to the south, the low curls up over Michigan. So watch it rain in Michigan on Sunday. Oops, sorry. There we go. And here's out to next Tuesday, bringing the rain through New England. And then the increased chances of storms down here out of the Mid-South, Tennessee Valley into the parts of the Southeast. Now, all of this is just flow coming around a subtropical ridge here. That's not a tropical system. Let's compare this to the GFS, same time period. So playing this forward through the weekend, do you now notice I'm watching right here in Michigan? See how the low is now curling up in Michigan? Remember, the GFS all week wanted it to curl up over Wisconsin. It still brings rain into Wisconsin, but doesn't curl up there. The GFS is a bit more generous with the rain over northern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And if we just take this out, it too increases the chances for storms in the Mid-South. Mid-South into the Southeast, excuse me. But let's go out there a week and do a little comparison. European, GFS, and combined, you get this. Everywhere in these colors, remember, is where the GFS is wetter than the European by this many inches. This is where the European is wetter. So notice down here in the Mid-South to Southeast, the European has a more northward track of the heavy rain, whereas the GFS is more south. The GFS is wetter right in through here versus where the European model is. But just kind of giving us an idea overall on what to expect out of these models. I do want to give you the quick comparison, though, because as we play them forward, there we go. This is the front sagging right there, well timed in the models. You see the storms to the south. I'm talking about out of Oklahoma into Arkansas earlier this weekend. You now see both models curling up the low in almost the exact same position, and then they push it off to the east. Now, after about 6 days, we get the storms that roll right in through here. Okay, see them there. This is next Wednesday night. But the models are really kind of falling apart on what to do after that point. Most of them keep this region a bit stormy and wetter. But when the next chances for precipitation come in, it's just not really well resolved by the models just yet. You can see they're both trying to bring something through here by the following Saturday, which would be the 17th. So let's look at some probability maps. Most important trend I saw in the ECMWF was that it did go drier in this area right here. Wetter to the south of it, but drier where I just drew those 3 arrows. Let me show you. This is the 10-day probability of getting an inch of rain. That's what you're looking at. This was the 12Z run for the same thing. See how it was wetter right in this area? So that's a concern. There's some big acres right in through here that we've got to get some moisture into, but it certainly fits with the narrative we've had for a while about this particular region. Let's also go look at the GFS ensemble. Let's go back to the 0Z run so we can kind of compare apples to apples here. And this is the same time period right there. So the GFS is a bit more generous farther to the north, but they have identified, I'll just kind of draw one big arrow through it, that corridor and then into New England as being the wettest. Do note that the GFS ensemble going out longer range does not develop that hurricane. It's only showing up in the operational runs. Bigger picture things. We still have this extended jet now. It is expected to go back toward its normal position. Still has a little bit of a poleward shift. Not a bad look for June. I don't like poleward shifts in July and August, and I don't like retracted shifts any time of the year, but we're not quite in the danger of this yet. But if you look out there by day 10, as that ridge begins to develop, look where the flow begins to increase. And southwest flow has a lot of us thinking about where the moisture will be and will this be able to initiate storms. And the likely answer to that is it will. It'll get going. So the week 2 forecasts, take a look. We're starting to see drier in this part of the cotton belt. It's in all 3 models. That's where the ridge begins to nose in. There will still be isolated storms in the southeast. But again, you see where the corridor, let's get those arrows off there. See where the corridor is of the wettest conditions? That has been very well resolved in the models, and we've kind of highlighted that as the track for a while now. So that's what the week 2 pattern is showing. So let's take this and go to the new, let's go to the temperature discussion, forgive me. And I want to show you what things have looked like between May 10th and June 8th. So that's that time period we've been watching the drought. Well, let's now see what the temperatures have been up to. This has been the problem. Above average north, cooler than average south. That's what stagnated the pattern. If these were flipped, we would be talking about a scenario that was kind of like, honestly, like 2019, where if they were flipped and all the cold was north and the warm was south, the jet would not stop in this area. And we would just have constant rain going through the midsection of the country. We flipped it. Remember that in future years. This is going to be critical to remind ourselves as to what happens when the temperature pattern is flipped. So from there, I want to show you a map. I'm sorry, I should have revived this a long time ago, but this map compares the total number of accumulated growing degree day units using the corn formula, so base 50, max 86, from April 1st of this year to June 7th. So it's always going to be a 2-day lag because I'm using the PRISM data set. And the numbers you're seeing in the colors represent anomalies. California, we have not picked up heat. Much of the Four Corner states, Texas, Red River Valley, in fact, the whole of the Cotton Belt is waiting on heat, whereas we are well above average in GDDs here and in the Pacific Northwest. In some places, over 200 compared to normal. So that's worth a week, maybe 10 days in June's worth of GDDs. That's how far ahead we are in certain places. Thinking about that, this morning, there's that front I mentioned. So at 5:40 when I was recording this, we're going to watch that front continue just to press its way this direction, get all the way down to Florida by this afternoon and this evening. And it was quite chilly in this region for this time in June. We're up here in the 30s in the North Woods of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. From there, let's go take a look at what the high temperatures are up to. Major rebound. We might see upwards of a 40 to 50 degree swing in temperatures here today, but the cooler air still sits over New England. Going into the weekend, there's Saturday, and I'll watch Sunday. Heat northwest, front comes through, curls up over Michigan, rain and clouds. Texas, though, the heat is on. 103, 101. This is going into Monday, Tuesday, hot, all right? Out there toward next Wednesday and Thursday. As the heat begins to rebuild itself here, we're going to watch for the moisture to come along with it. And that's what's going to set us up such that once we get that ridge in place, we're going to fire off storms in this direction. That's at least the thinking at this point. But I've showed you how low California is on GDDs. And if you just go out there, you'll notice that this entire forecast, all the way out there to day 5 through 10, just does not bring in the heat into this area. But watch. Going out there toward the middle of the month, into that third week, if we bring in heat here and keep it colder there, that's where the momentum comes from. That's the contrast that gets the jet going. And there's, as I showed in last night's in-depth, reason to believe that we're going to open up the corridor of the Gulf of Mexico to moisture. Last thing I want to point out to you today, let's take a quick look at South America. As we talked about, colder air is advancing north, and there is going to be the risk of frost. I see it coming into parts of Argentina. Question is, will we get it into southern Brazil? But one thing we do note about southern Brazil is take a look at these precipitation anomalies being forecast over the next 10 days. Very wet on the tail end of the safrinha. Anything planted late is getting a huge drink here, but it might start to slow some harvest progress in places. This is really going to push that safrinha crop even bigger. All right, I'm going to stop there. Have a great weekend. I will talk to you on Monday. Thank you.